Hello, and welcome back to the Stories of Northern Life podcast, brought to you by the Sault Ste. Marie Museum. I'm your host, Nicole, and today it is June, so happy Pride, and that means that we are now getting back into our Queer Project series. So today, for our first queer project of 2026, we are doing an interview with Ashton. So last week we interviewed Ashton, talked about his journey as an author, things like that, and now we're going to delve a little bit more into sort of his life as a queer person here in Sault Ste. Marie. So let's get into the episode. So, can you state your full name and preferred pronouns for us?
Yes, I'm Ashton Carter, and my preferred pronouns are he, him, they, them.
And now, only if you're comfortable, can you tell me how you identify?
Yeah, I identify as a queer gay man. So a little bit of non-binary thrown in there, but I like men. What can I say? That's how I was born.
Speaking of being born, when and where were you born?
Right. August 11th, 1996, in Elliott Lake, Ontario.
And so, what was your childhood like growing up in Elliott Lake?
Well, that's a good question. So I didn't spend too much time in Elliott Lake. The first 4 years of my life, Elliott Lake. And then we moved to Kitchener, Waterloo, for another 4. And then we came to the Sault, and we've been in the Sault for... ever since. So I'll just talk about growing up in the Sault because I basically did. Not fun for some of it, and then when you meet your people and you realize that you're sexy and that people want you, and that's true of everybody, then you really start to kind of live in the space and live in your own skin. And that part of my growing up was excellent. But the beginning of it, like it is for so many queer kids, was painful and nearly cost me my life.
Now, growing up, you were sort of talking before in our last podcast with you that you can go and check out, sort of how school was difficult for you. Was that in part sort of because of being part of the queer community? And like also at that time, did you sort of, I guess, identify with that? Like maybe like in one part, like internally, like have that sort of understanding. And then did you share that with sort of, I guess, the community kind of thing?
Right. When I was that age, and I'm just going to sort of like date it here. So like grade 4 to grade 7, I didn't identify as gay.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what that was. The thing about me and my family is that we've never had a lot of money, right? And my mother and my father are both very well-educated people despite that. My mother is a reader, voracious reader, and my father is a network engineer. He's very intelligent. He always has been. Both of them have been much about skepticism and questioning, right? And they encouraged me and all of my siblings to sort of get close to the metal, as it were, when it comes to what I believe in and what I identify as, right? And really to question those things. So I was at that age aware of what people called me, but I refused to identify as it because I wasn't sure. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't sure until later on when I came out that I just said, okay, yes, this is who I am, right? Because you begin to learn that when kids, especially when you're that age, when they call you gay or they call you a fag, right, or whatever they're going to call you, they're imitating other people, mm-hmm. right? They're not really, which is not an excuse for behaviors, but it's an explanation. It's where it comes from, right? But yeah, I mean, from grade 4, right off the bat, I am just the kind of person that it's never been an easy thing for me to hide. There's I like to think of it as like a stain you can't wash out. It's there, and you can and this is true, I think, of any queer person. You can know what it is to lead a different kind of life, but you're always going to be who you really are at the end of it. And that's a line from The Boys in the Band, which everybody should watch. But yeah, that was definitely the basis of the difficulty. And I won't get into detail about some of the things that occurred, but children are monstrous, and that's a fact. Left to their own devices, worse than adults. So I went through it, and the difficult thing is that there were other queer kids there. I wasn't the only one, but I was the one who wasn't able to subvert myself enough. And I'm also not from here originally, so I didn't have the community on my side. And so that makes it difficult for me not to engage in some lateral violence from time to time, knowing the history and knowing people who were present for my hazing, I'll call it that. And that's a very light term for what occurred. Who are in the community now and I interface with because they are gay, but who knew me at that age and watched some things occur, right? And it's difficult for me sometimes not to be like, but as an adult, you come to understand that we were all just trying to survive.
Yeah.
And that's, so.
So, also, like, when did you sort of first come out, and what was that like? Did it sort of, how did it sort of change things? Did you feel maybe more hatred from one side and then maybe more welcoming and acceptance from another?
I came out in the 10th grade, so I was 14-ish when I came out. And unfortunately for me, it was quite anticlimactic because, like I said, I've never been good at hiding it. So I began with a phone conversation with my mother, and that went around and around and around until she eventually was like, okay, just tell me what it is. And I think I know what it is that you've called me to tell me about, right? And it was really just a slow process of, I know, and yes, okay, and what now, kind of, which you might think from the outside looking in that that's a positive thing. But the reality is that it can be a bit demoralizing, especially if, considering the amount of effort that it takes to build yourself up to the point where you're going to admit to yourself, okay, fine, this is who I am. I'm going to move forward with this identity. And you don't do it out of I probably look a little glib about it, but you don't do it for that. You do it because you know it's the right thing to do, because it feels good. And I also want to say that I had an influence. I had a coming out influence. I believe he still lives in Toronto. His name is Jamie Murray. So just coincidentally, he was a close family friend of a family friend who would come over for dinners after my dad remarried my stepmother, a friend of hers. And he would come to dinner parties, and when he started to show up, he had just come out. And I was a fly on the wall for his joy. And it occurred to me that I could feel that way about myself if I was honest, right? So it really was like a flash boil. Didn't take long after I first saw Jamie elated and dating people and gabbing with everybody at the table, which is really what I wanted to do, but I didn't do because I was afraid. And then I came out and have been pursuing that joy, which I've thankfully found in spades ever since. Yeah.
Mm. And so was the rest of your family sort of accepting?
Yeah. I have a few different sort of exchanges, right? So my mom, of course, knew, and she knew from the time I was probably 4 because I was obsessed with Leonardo DiCaprio, like obsessed. And I mean Basketball Diaries, Leo, not The Revenant. So it was obviously kind of like a foregone conclusion for her. My older siblings, yeah, they knew. They were wise to it. My younger sister, Erin, our relationship, I think, is the one that went through the most change in that process. We fought endlessly leading up to that point. I mean, we loved each other, but we were at odds. And when I came out, she became like an angel of vengeance for me. It was like she was always here, and I didn't always see her, and she was waiting for someone to fuck with me, waiting. Because the thing about Erin that most people don't know is that she's possessed by a spirit of vengeance. It's when someone goes after someone that she loves, she's like a dog from hell. And I mean, I've had people tell me that when I get angry, I can be scary, but that's nothing compared to Erin in her heyday. She was a furious whirlwind. And so she became my biggest ally in that process. My dad, I mean, I ended up having to take him to dinner because I thought it was such a big deal, and he just went right on board, So, crack the whip, get in line. This is who I am. You knew, relax. But it was good. It wasn't. I didn't have any, relatives who were mad at me for it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody kind of just said, "Yeah, I know."
And then, sort of, at that time, was there sort of a queer community presence here in the Sioux for you? Because nowadays we see it more, but sort of at that time, how what was your sort of experiences?
So when I came out, I very quickly made a transition, thanks to my best friend at the time, who is still a friend of mine, Liz Pearson, Lizard, who is the foremost stick poke artist in the Sioux, and actually I'd probably say a good part of Ontario. She's very, very talented. They're very, very talented. When I came out, Liz made an effort to say, okay, we're going to go to the GSA at the college. That was a thing at the time. I don't know if it's still a thing. But that was where you went if you were young and you were queer, to make connections. And I met some people there. And I'm glad that you asked this question, actually, because it's important for me, as I'm turning 30 this year, so I'm getting closer and closer to queer elder status. I take the role of a mentor to any queer youth very seriously. And what I would say is, unfortunately, you have to be very careful, because just because you're queer doesn't mean that you're a good person. There are plenty of people who see freshly outed young queer people as meat. And that happened to me, unfortunately. And I'm grateful that I had just enough people on my side to catch me before I got myself into some situations in my naivete as a young, sort of no holds barred, what am I going to do, right? I had a mother who was extremely protective of me. I had friends who said, no, that doesn't sound right. So even if you don't have a lot of people like that in your circle, find somebody who you think is even remotely trustworthy and confide in them. And, don't just say yes, to things because you want experiences. Say no if you're doubtful, because doubt is no, just, be careful. But that's what I went through when I was that age. I entered the community and I was immediately met with some predatory behavior that I had to work my way through. And it's taught me a lot and turned me into the kind of person who will fight someone if I have to. If I hear that they're taking advantage of queer youth in this city, I don't stand for it. It's unnecessary and dangerous and just gross. But I survived to be able to do that.
So do you participate in any queer events in the Sioux?
Oh yeah. So I had my breakout during the time when there were protests at the library for this drag story time. I caught a hair of some kind of rage and decided to counter protest with everybody else, and it was amazing to be able to aim my anger that I had built up over years towards society and the world at someone who was quite literally holding up a sign declaring all the things that I hated about myself, and gave me an opportunity to say, that's not me. I am a human being. I'm a person. I'm a good person. I do things intentionally to help other people because that's what I believe in and that's who I choose to be. And so I started there because up until that point, I kind of kept myself away from everything out of fear of and a difficulty with people, which I've always found it difficult sometimes for me to be around other people. And I got the opportunity to, scream at some bigots, and it was excellent for my mental health, and it changed me. It did. And since then, I will be choosy about some of the events I attend, because, like I said, just because you're queer doesn't mean you're a good person. Sometimes there are people who run events that I don't get along with, and it's not that something bad has happened. It's just I get a vibe or an energy that I don't like, and I just don't partake, and that's me. But, I, just to give you examples, volunteer at Cafe for Good on Thursdays for Queer Coffee Night. And I do that because it's action-based in the community. It provides a space, particularly for trans youth in this community, to come and to be safe. And you best believe that you are, because, like I said, I'll fight anybody. I'm at that counter doing dishes, but if someone were to come in causing problems, I would take care of it. We would all take care of it. All the people who volunteer there, we're all kind of on the same page with that. I do that. I attend Marry the Night, of course. I'm always sort of on the sidelines. I like to observe. I don't like being in the spotlight. I never have. But to answer your question, I can be a little choosy with what events that I attend, because, there are some gross people out there.
Mm. And then sort of, as a whole, do you find sort of the community accepting of queer people here, like in the Sioux? And then also, how is our queer community accepting of people, but also sort of, I guess putting quotes, like outsiders, so people like moving to the Sioux?
Yeah, I mean, the queer community itself, the part of it that I'm attached to, I take a great pride in bringing people into the circle, because I feel like I know what it's like to be on the outside of it, first and foremost. And I know what positive effect it can have to be added, to be included into the circle. And when I say included, I mean I open the door. Your actions speak for themselves. You are who you are. If you crash out with the community, that's not on me, that's on you. But I will open the door for you, and that's very important. So in that regard, I would say there are certain circles here in the Sioux within the queer community that are very accepting and safe, and certain circles that are not. And I don't want to call anybody out, so I won't really talk about what circles I consider to be not for me. The general public in the Sioux, I really am a great believer in public neutrality. I think most people don't give a shit. There are people in the Sioux who have a problem with it, and those people are not for me, and I don't spend my time thinking about them, and neither should you. And when they come to the library and try and stop us from reading books, I will be there with other people to tell them to fuck off. But on the whole, I think it is, depending on who you are, right? I get away with being able to do certain things because of how I present, I think. And that's the work of the community, to provide space so that the people who are differently presenting, who have a difficult time making their way through based on how they present, can have a place to go with other people so they can socialize. And it's not difficult and it's not unsafe. But I mean, try and stop me from walking down the street. I'll boot you. Like, I don't care. And that's just me. That's just who I am. And I've never had to, I guess, to speak to the Sioux. That's never occurred for me, where I have to actually physically fight on the street for the right to walk where I want to walk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Also, getting into maybe a little bit of a different side topic or whatever. So how would you say most people sort of know you in the Sioux?
Most people know me as a tarot reader,
Okay.
who don't know me personally, right? So I've been doing that for since I was 14, so 10, 11, 12, 13 years, 12 years, I guess. So I've I think, a little bit of a reputation in the community of people who are interested in that as a reader. And then more and more these days, people are starting to know me for who I really am, which is an author and a poet and a writer, which is this book right here. And I would just say personally that my friends know me as someone that they can talk to, right? I try, and I believe this too, that you choose who you want to be. To give people right off and say like, oh, you are who you are. That's bullshit. You choose the kind of person you want to be in this world, and you act that way. And everybody has the right to choose who they want to become. And so I chose a long time ago to be a person that people can be safe around, specifically women. I take a great pride in being a gold star gay. And it's not sexist. It has to do with an obligation. I feel a great obligation to my kin, my female kin, my women kind, to be the person that you can come to in a bar or on the street or, whatever. And you have protection with me, you have safety with me. I'll do what I can because I know how I present. I know the space that I take up in the world. And I'm going to use that to my advantage to enact my own agenda. Of course I am. And my agenda is safety for people. So that's how I think, that's what I would like to think that people think of me, who know me as someone who they can come to in a moment of need, whether it's emotional. I love to listen. I'm a listener. I'm really bad for therapizing. So if you want that, I'll help you with that. I can therapize you for sure.
What was your sort of, I guess, like with the tarot reading and things like sort of how was that like getting into that part of yourself?
Right. Tarot was presented to me as a gift when I first was given it, and that's how I carry it. That's what I say to people when they ask me, because people ask that question too. How did you get into it? Why do you do it? What's the purpose? Tarot, like the queer community, like any place in the world, has people in it that do it for the wrong reasons. And so it's very important for me to be the kind of reader that I am. I don't have all the answers. I don't always know how the cards work. I just know how to read them. And it's a practice. It's taken me a lot of years of having the cards and reading myself and reading other people to be able to come to the level of skill that I have with it. And everyone's a little different, right? But it's a way of conversing, right? That's my personal philosophy. It's not magic in the sense that I'm going to lay down the cards and know everything about you. It's about connection. And so you might call it channeling in a way. I'm channeling you and you're channeling me. There's an open line of communication. And I really don't think that it's esoteric in the sense that it only happens in a tarot reading. I think it happens every day. And good conversation happens when two people have a tether of connection and they are clear and they're on the same page and you're kind of in each other's heads. That's essentially, I think, what's happening there. The cards are a facilitator. They're a tool, right? And there's many different ways you can do it. You can be like me, a sort of intuitive reader, or you can be a scholar. I feel like it's important to do both because scholarship is, if you ask me, it's very important. Because there's a great history of tarot. There's a lot of history that spans hundreds of years, and it's also important for people in the West, and I mean North America, white people, to understand that we inherit everything that we have. And so it's not about guilt, it's about education. Knowing where your practices came from. For me, it's connected to my Celtic ancestors, and I take time to study and learn that connection because I can feel it in myself. And I have Norse ancestors as well. So I come at it from a couple different angles, right? Both cultures have their own ways of practicing types of divination and spiritual veneration and prognostication. Asking questions about the why of everything is natural. It's a human function. So that's just the kind of person that I am. It was brought to me and it stuck with me, and it's just something that I've done because it it makes me feel connected to something else. And it's very valuable. I see its value in people who I read. Sometimes you need to hear something from someone else, not you. People are more predictable than they think they are, and that's okay. It's not a bad thing. That makes it a lot easier to just take a breath and realize that it's not a great big deal. You are just a human being. And that's a fascinating thing, but it's also a humbling thing.
Like maybe a bit of a strange question, but how do you feel that, like coming out as queer and like growing that like identity and like being more comfortable with being open with yourself, also sort of compared to starting to do tarot and getting more comfortable with like that part of your identity? How did you feel that, like, did you feel they sort of helped each other so that you can be more comfortable in presenting sort of like your whole identity? Because I know you're also sort of an author and a writer, but I feel that's also different because that's a professional side. So that's almost like a different hat that you wear.
Yeah. The question is making me want to talk about this thing that is, and this is more a thinking thing that I do about what it means to be queer, and not just my position as a queer person in society, but a lot of queer people. And as time goes on, it becomes more and more obvious that this is occurring. Queer people are, a lot of them, very, very good at what they do, whether it's an art or a craft or science, or whatever it is that you do as a queer person. And I think that we strive as queer people to do certain things in a type of way to prove that we're valuable. And so what happens, I think, is queer people and the actions they take to become valuable in their communities become commodified by people who are not queer. And it doesn't have to be commodification in a negative way, right? But and I say this with the utmost love, I love doing card readings for girls who are getting their heart broken because, that's my role. And my role as a male identifying queer person who has my finger in the pie of what it means to be a man. And I do think that on the whole, queer men have a greater understanding of what it means to be a man because we've been at odds with it our entire lives, and we have to weigh ourselves against what we see versus, we're given a reason to think about it. Others, you just do what you're going to do and you don't really think about it, you don't question it. But because of the way that history is unfolded with my people, it's a question and not a statement. So of course I think about it, and in thinking about things you come to a greater understanding. So my role as a reader and my role as a poet and my role as a friend, I take them very operatively, very seriously, because I believe in service to others. That is the thing that I believe. And for some people, that's a negative, right? Why should queer people have to be in service to others? I don't have to prove myself to you, and these are true things that I think about. But I also think about, well, I have to get on, and I have to find joy where I can find it. So I've garnered a skill for this. I turn every negative thing that could be tossed at me into something positive. So do people come to me for readings because I'm the soft-hearted gay guy who's going to tell it to you like it is and is going to coddle you a little bit and speak softly to you? Yes, and I think that's okay. And I think that I think it's a natural evolution of things. Yes, let me show you my value. I am valuable. Queer people are valuable. And as time goes on, as we move forward and through certain geopolitical and other things, other crises in the world, we begin to see the value of minority groups in that they are pushed into excellence. And, you can see it in fashion, queer fashion. The amount of straight guys that I see wearing pearls these days, which is fine. Wear what you want to wear. But that came from my people. we popularized it, and that's okay. I'm not in a rush to prove myself to anybody. Go ahead, slay, as I would say, go girl. Get your thing, wear those pearls. But there's it's a kind of maturity that you're required to understand. Like, yeah, they're using our culture a little bit to make themselves more appealing, and that's fine. And so I think about that in terms of my connection to being queer and my connection to my roles. This is a role that I play. The writing is a little different, as you say, because it's more connected to who I am as a person as opposed to the tarot, which is something that I'm good at because of who I am, not necessarily who I am. And so much of it is just listening and just attempting to see people clearly. That's the effort, is looking at a person and not trying to make them into something that they're not, just trying to meet them and receive them as who they are presenting. And you get a good nose for bullshit. You do, as a queer person, because you get a lot of it. So yeah.
All right. And then sort of lastly, were there any sort of events, locally, provincially, federally, globally, whatever, that sort of affected you, your family, your community? And now sort of some examples could be like Stonewall, the AIDS crisis, or COVID-19. And now I know that sort of the first two are sort of before our time, but I still feel there's an impact.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, so I'll talk about Stonewall and the AIDS crisis first and foremost. COVID is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Every queer person, regardless of age, ought to be involved in thinking about those things because it does impact you, whether or not you believe it does or not. And I, a couple of years ago, did make it to New York, and I did go to Stonewall. I went to the location, I went in the bar. It's important, I think, for a sense of identity to think about it. And if you can go there and to see it and to feel the energy of the space. New York is a horror for me. I'll never go back. It's too much. It's too much pain. You can feel it. I'm an emotionally receptive person. I feel like that's become quite obvious. So stepping out of my cab into Manhattan was almost like crippling. But going to Stonewall, attending AIDS vigils here, because that is something that you can do, that occurs every year. This connects back to my sense of togetherness along with these spirits of these queer ancestors that I have that I've never met, who are my kin, who died way too young, who passed through unimaginable horror. That belongs to me. I take that. That's mine. That's my history. And you're either the kind of person who takes that charge or you're not. And I think you're doing yourself a disservice by not letting yourself feel the weight of that. That belongs to us. That's our history. And I really think it's important to say it's not a history for just some people, right? It's a history for the entire queer community, not just gay men, not just lesbians, not just bi people. The trans community was at the head of all of that. Every single thing that's occurred in our history that is of any relevance at all, there were trans people at the forefront of it. So, yes, I was disappointed when I went to New York to find that there wasn't a statue of Marsha and Sylvia. Very disappointed. But also, sometimes you have to make the change you want to see in the world. So, if I ever become the mayor of New York, there's going to be a statue put up, because those are just two really popular examples of trans queer folk who spearheaded our salvation. They crawled so that people could walk, so that I could run. And I'm very much thinking that I'm in the running generation. There's a lot of running going on here. But these events impact us all, and it's important that we spend time thinking about them. And it's not about you, right? It's about us. It's about everybody. So, when you are at a bar and you're having a good time and there's a guy on you or whatever, and it's nice, it's great, I'm just the kind of person who at the end of the night says thank you to these people that I can't see, but who lived before me and died so that I could have that experience. I believe in that. COVID was easy for me. I actually loved COVID. I hate to say that because I am an introvert and I like being by myself. And isolating was easy for me because that's how I make my art. That's what I do. I need to do it by myself. So, it was a great thing for me to be able to walk around at night with nobody in sight, no one to share the sidewalk with, just me. And, have a little bit of and walk and think and just take in the world and take up space. And for a person like me, COVID was a bit of a dream because it's a silence that you wish for, you beg for every day. That, it's just a constant cacophony of people and cars and thoughts and opinions and angry and sad and happy. And it all stopped very suddenly on March 17th of 2020, right? It changed people, right? And that's not an excuse for behavior. Some people have really gone a negative way with it, but I took it as a time for me to intentionally take a break from being a human being in this world, and it was great for me. I thrived during COVID, I really did, and I'm not saying that to be coy about people who didn't, who really struggled. I feel that. There were moments of struggle for me, but mostly I enjoyed it. As a queer person, it was nice to be able to walk on the street by myself.
All right. So now, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah. I would like to make a statement.
Okay.
Specifically to queer youth who are of voting age. Okay. Go to the fucking polls and vote. Just vote, okay? I'm tired of this. This is the reason why we have problems, is because young people don't vote. Vote. It is one of your only true rights in this country to vote. So use it. Even if you're not sure about who to vote for, read. You know how to do that. I know you do. Read. Pick someone and vote. Because right now, you are allowing your parents and your grandparents to make a decision for you, and it is impacting our way of life. So stop and vote. And if you know me and you need a ride to the poll, I'll give you one. Just ask. I would much rather you do that than not vote at all. It's not pointless. We have to take a stand on some of this stuff and change things. And the only way you're going to do that is by putting a ballot in a box. So do it. No BS. Just do it. No excuses. That's it. Vote.
All right. Now, we do have one more final question.
Oh, okay.
Now, this is a question we ask all of our interviewees. So, if in 100 years the museum was ever to do an exhibit on you, one, what would the title of the exhibit be, and possibly the tagline? And then, what would 3 artifacts be that best sort of represent you?
Oh gosh. Probably unnecessarily awkward. And then I don't know, the life and death of a curmudgeon, because I am a bit of a curmudgeon. And then obviously the artifacts that I would want you to have would be at least one of my books, and then my deck of cards, and then a jacket of mine, because I love jackets. I have a problem. I have more jackets than I have pairs of pants. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So thank you for coming on our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, you might like our blog too. Head over to our website, Sault Museum, that's SAULT museum.ca, and look under Discover. You will find our blog, Museum Musings. We share short synopsis of influential people, historic places, and impactful events in our history. Pictures are always included, and you will be sure to learn a little something new with each post.